Hey, and welcome to the Built Different podcast. I'm Jake, your host, and this is where we have conversations with our senior engineers over here at Banyan Labs. And we just talk about the technology behind what we've built, and we get to hear their perspectives, and we also get to see how the message of Banyan and Persevere have been implemented into their lives. I have with me again today Andrew Thomas, who is one of our senior devs who works on a lot of our projects and gives us a lot of insight and one of our greatest mentors. Hey, good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Jake.
So what's really cool is probably most people are not used to developers being up and available at 6:30 in the morning. But for us, because our days are so busy, this is the perfect time to just have a conversation without ClickUp or Slack constantly going off, right?
Yeah. To get the most work
So
done between 6 and 8 a.m.
tell me about it. I mean, it's a thing. Before we get started, man, I'm excited to talk about JONA. I got to visit with you a couple of weeks ago about Compass. Man, just remind us, tell us who you are and tell us about your day-to-day at Banyan Labs.
Well, I'm Andrew. I'm one of the senior developers at Banyan. Day to day, I'm pretty much hands-on involved in a majority of the projects that are being developed. Everything from mentoring junior developers to going in and making sure deadlines are met, as well as pretty heavily involved in the Banyan Labs architecture design.
Yeah, awesome,
Mm.
awesome. Man, I was thinking about this. You know, people hear the term lead developer or senior engineer. When people hear that, they almost always have a picture that comes to their mind, but how does what they picture differ from the reality?
That's a good question. So when people hear lead developer, they often picture someone who lives in architecture diagrams, picks every framework and only writes they call it hard code,
Yeah.
while everyone implements the tickets that we get on like ClickUp or what have you, right? They might also assume it's mostly managing people or that you're removed from day-to-day engineering. My reality is closer to ownership with your hands still on the system. So a lot of the job is making the path clear, right?
Yeah.
Prioritizing what's worth building, naming trade-offs in plain language, and keeping quality steady across off data deployments and security, not just like feature work. I still write and review code, but the highest leverage work is often preventing rework. So aligning on requirements early, choosing boring, reliable patterns, and unlocking the team or unblocking the team when something ambiguous hits production pressure. So it's less mastermind architect in a tower and more accountable engineer who makes the whole product shippable.
I hear you. Awesome. Well, man, we're here to talk about JONA today, and JONA stands for Job Opportunities and Next Step Advancement. When did you first hear about the vision for this product, and what was your gut reaction?
When I hear about it, mid last year, I believe it was mid to late last year. I heard about it. I heard there was a team that was building out a second chance job opportunity platform. It sounded like a really good idea and something that's been missing, right? Something that's, well, missing. My gut reaction to it was that is going to be really cool if it's done right, because in my mind, there's nothing else like that out there. You got a bunch of competitors that are in the job market. Like I don't need to name them, but everybody knows what they are. But you have a bunch of job placement platforms or job seeker or job hunting or employer posting platforms all over the internet, and they all do the same thing. There's none that are really different from one another except for maybe styling, right? But none that catered to what JONA is built for, which is second chances. So
Yeah.
my gut reaction to that was, if it's done right, that's going to be really, really, really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Building a job platform is one thing, right? And you've mentioned several or alluded to several, but building one specifically for justice impacted individuals is another, right? And we know that that's an untapped resource and pool of talent. Is there anything that you had to unlearn from, I don't know, traditional software development to build JONA?
So a lot of default product engineering assumes a stable, trusting user, right? So they got reliable phone and email, right? Comfort with dense dashboards, if you will, plenty of time to click through onboarding, and a basic belief that the system is on your side. That's what's out there now, right? With JONA, I had to optimizing primarily for speed and engagement, and instead prioritize clarity, access, and emotional safety in the product. So that meant catching myself when I reached for patterns that work in mainstream consumer apps, like clever minimal copy, aggressive upsells, assumptions that users will figure it out, or flows that punish mistakes. I had to unlearn treating edge cases as rare. Variability is the baseline here. I also had to unlearn the idea that more features equal more value. Because for this audience, fewer steps, plain language, forgiven error states, and transparent handling of sensitive information is going to matter more than slick novelty. But most importantly, I had to unlearn building only from internal intuition and learn to treat lived experience and casework realities as a first class input, not a late usability pass. So the goal isn't just matching people to jobs, it's reducing friction and shame on a process that already carries weight.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the mission of Jonah, right? So, our users for the product, they're not just job seekers, right? They're not just any job seekers, I guess, right? Because many of them are coming out of incarceration, so they're navigating real barriers in their life. How does that shape the UX decisions that you guys made?
Everything has to make sense, right? Like you said, a lot of them are coming out of incarceration. So I'll speak on that. So, how long have they been incarcerated? A lot of people are going to spend years, right? They're going to spend years in incarceration, whether that's in a facility, in a rehab, what have you, right? They're going to be removed from society for an extended period of time in most cases. And technology changes on a daily basis, right? Um, what you see today is not what was out there 5 years ago, much less 6 months ago, right?
Yeah,
It's ever changing. So it had to be built with that in mind. It had to be built that, okay, the user experience has to be friendly. It has to be smooth. It has to make sense, and it has to not confuse anybody, right? Everything, it needs to be like a self-guided system that literally anybody can get in there and say to themselves, okay, this makes sense. So
yeah.
that was first and foremost in my mind as it was being developed.
Has there ever been a moment during development where maybe something technical you or the team built made you realize the human weight of what you were working on? Or did you, because we're both just as impacted, was that something that you knew pretty much going in?
Yeah, I'd say there was a point where it stopped feeling abstract. So
Yeah,
we had built what looked like a straightforward workflow, right? Something like tracking an application or saving progress through a job flow. And once it worked end to end, I realized it wasn't just fun. For the person
yeah,
on the side, that state change can mean they finally have proof they took the step, meaning they can show a case manager, revisit when anxiety spikes, or use to keep momentum when life gets chaotic. Well, the technical part was small. The meaning was huge. That's when the weight of it, I'd say, landed for me.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your team, right? Yeah, as a senior engineer at Banyan, you have developers that work alongside you. You mentor them, you lead them, you hold them accountable, right? And Jonah is built by developers who, like us, came through the Persevere program. So
Mm.
people with lived experience of the justice system, right? How does that change the culture of your development team?
I'd say it changes the culture because the user stops being a persona document and becomes someone you might actually sit next to in a stand up every day. So the feedback's going to get sharper and faster. You hear early, like when an assumption in the UI, copy, or workflow doesn't match real life, housing instability, documentation gaps, trust of institutions, time pressure. And all this comes instantly, not weeks later in a research report. Debates about
Yeah,
features are less theoretical. People can say, that's not how it actually works. And it carries weight because it's grounded in experience, not opinion. It
yeah,
also raises accountability. So you ship with less tolerance for lazy defaults, mocking edge cases, victim blaming language, or hey, just ship it mentalities because
yeah,
the cost isn't abstract. Practically, it builds a team culture that values psychological safety and learning alongside technical craft. You're not only reviewing code, you're constantly aligning engineering choices with dignity and outcomes because the distance between builder and impacted community is smaller. That doesn't mean every decision is emotional. It means the team's definition of quality includes whether we'd want our own community to use what we built or not.
yeah, yeah. Did you guys ever have like a code review or a design discussion where someone said, that's not exactly how it actually works for our users? And what did that do to change the direction of the product?
So I don't have one perfect moment where like a single sentence flips the roadmap. right? And I'd kind of rather be accurate instead of dramatic. So
Sure.
what I do have is ongoing adjustments from people closer to the mission than I am. So whether that's feedback from teammates with lived experience, program staff, or user testing, the pattern I've learned is to catch assumptions early, especially around time, documentation, trust, and cognitive load, and treat that feedback as a requirement, not a polish pass. So if I were to point to a recent example today, it'd be really hard
Yeah.
because everything inside of the development for JONA has, man, it's just been fluid. It was an ever changing development process, but the end goal never moved, right? Our destination was always the same, but the development in it was, I don't know, we realized we were optimizing for a happy path that isn't most people's reality, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know the best way to put it. It
No.
was a very different type of experience. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Man, so let's talk, right? We're always in a constant state of development, right? We're never done with our products. We're constantly improving those, getting feedback from our customers and clients and our partners. And so constantly, looking through the backlog, adding to the backlog and using that to govern and give insight to our sprints. So think about Jonah and think about where it could be 3 years from now, right? What version of Jonah 3 years from now would make you feel like you've really built something?
Oh, that's easy. So 3 years from now, I would feel like we really built something if Jonah isn't measured mainly as more job postings, but it's a reliable, trusted pathway. Participants or graduates of Persevere can move from discovery to application to follow through with a clear status, verified progress, and support that doesn't fall through the cracks. Because honestly, that's a big problem, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, the version that would make me proud is one where employers and programs trust the signals, not because the UI is flashy, but because outcomes and documentation are consistent and fair. I'd want evidence that we reduced pointless friction for job seekers while genuinely lightening casework, but without replacing the human relationship. So if we could point to real stories at scale, people who advanced into stable work with less humiliation, less rerun of the same paperwork, and more second chances that were real, I'd call that a version that mattered.
yeah, for sure. And you said something that resonates with me. You mentioned that, just the reality of people and things falling through the cracks, right? There are 70 million Americans with criminal records. If Jonah reaches scale and it becomes the primary conduit through which justice impacted individuals gain employment, what does that actually mean for the country?
A lot. That's a big number too. 70 million American
Yeah,
criminal
yeah,
records. I did not know it was that high. So Jonah wouldn't solve 70 million stories with one app, right? But it could change what normal looks like in hiring and reentry support. It would mean fewer people lose momentum because the system can't see their training, progress, or reliability. So less repeated paperwork, fewer dead ends, and more places where fair chance hiring is backed by clear processes instead of good intentions alone. So for
yeah,
employers, that would mean access to a broader talent pool with better signals and less guesswork, which can reduce bias by default screening. So for communities, the practical effect is more people stabilizing and work faster, less wasted talent, less cyclical instability driven purely by administrative friction. Policy and
right.
culture still matter enormously, though. So software can't replace that. But if Jonah reaches scale in the right way, the country moves a step closer to a labor market where a record is context, not an automatic life sentence in the job search, and where
Yeah.
second chances are operational, not just a talking point.
As we come to a close, right, we're calling this series Built Different, right? And
Hmm.
that's how Banyan wants to shape what we do and how we work. In your mind, what makes Jonah and the team behind it actually different?
We're not trying to win a job board race on gimmicks. What we're trying to do is fix the full journey. And the full journey is access, trust, documentation, a follow through, but most importantly, dignity in a process that in all reality, currently it's off stripped from that's often stripping those things away. So what makes the team different, I'd say, is proximity.
Yeah,
This isn't a room of well-meaning outsiders guessing at pain points, right? It's a people building with lived experience, which changes what quality means. Speed matters, but so does accuracy and tone and having a real life fit. And culturally, it's built different in the least flashy way.
Yeah.
Fewer
Yeah.
excuses, more accountability to outcomes people feel, and a willingness to change direction when the software starts optimizing for the wrong human cost.
Yeah. What would you say, man, to a developer, right? As a mentor, as a senior engineer, what would you say to a developer who maybe has the technical chops but hasn't yet found work they believe in?
I'd tell them that your skills are a kind of leverage. Most people don't get to choose what systems get built, but you
Yeah.
do. And if you haven't found work you believe in yet, don't assume that means lowering your bar for engineering, right? It usually means raising your bar for alignment, the problem, the ethics, the pace, and who benefits when you ship. Look for teams where curiosity is paired with accountability, where users are real, feedback is welcomed, and works on my machine isn't the culture. And give yourself permission to experiment. Because sometimes you only know what feels meaningful after you taste a few flavors of impact. But if
Sure.
nothing else, build where your craft compounds with your values. The best engineers I know aren't the ones chasing hype. They're the ones who can sleep at night because what they shipped matches who they are.
Andrew, thank you so much for being with me this morning and for talking to us about some of the things that you and your team have built. Man, I really appreciate you. I appreciate your work and your labor, the intentionality with how you design and how you lead. And for those of you who are listening, this has been a Built Different podcast, which is a series by Banyan Labs. If you're interested in some of the things that we do, interested in some of the solutions that we offer, you can visit us at banyanlabs.io to learn more. You can check out our Facebook page, check out our LinkedIn page, check out our Insta page, and just reach out and let's have a conversation. Andrew, thanks again for being with us today.
Thanks, Jake.
We'll see ya.
All right, buddy.